Good morning. Oh, he's got this way too bright for my brain. Gotta love Carl this morning. There, a little better. Good morning, everyone. This is Stacy. We are loving my veteran, and this is walking in my shoes. Sorry, it took me a minute to pop on. I was having a conversation with Carl this morning, my veteran, and loving on him, and realized I wasn't ready to get going this morning. So just wanted to say good morning. Again, we're going to finish up this month talking about our toolbox and learning to use the tools in our toolbox to communicate, to set our boundaries. How do we do it? We know what our boundaries are. We know what our rights are. We know so much about it, and we now need to learn to, good morning, Jen. We need to learn to put it all together. We need to learn to utilize the tools in our toolbox. How do they all go together? How do they work together so that we can be productive? I mean, if you don't know what a saw is, you know that it's a saw, but you don't know how to use it. You may be like missing fingers and stuff. So we have to talk about that. But before we get too into that, please do not forget that Wednesdays in the evenings, about 6:30ish, Stephanie, good morning, sister. Stephanie does Wellness Wednesdays. She is amazing. So I wanted to tell you that. And last night we had our first advisory council meeting. We now have a true advisory council that helps us create the direction of loving my veterans. So you're going to see some changes to the page a little bit. You're going to see some new and improved stuff. The website's going to change a little bit. So I have to thank this very dedicated group of people. It was Sunny and Michelle, Stephanie, Nakia, Melissa, Sue, myself, and Pamela had a migraine, so she wasn't there. But we will become your advisory councils. We're the people that kind of help direct the page and where it's going and where the group is going, and so we can get the best information out to you. So there's so much coming up. There's some revamping that we're going to do, but don't forget about Wednesday night in the evening when Stephanie does Wellness Wednesday. So we have so much going on. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Stacy. All right, so let's get talking about learning to use or relearning to use the tools that are in our toolbox. We talked about them yesterday. I have to look at the list. We're talking about our rights. We have a right not to be perfect, and we have a right to make mistakes. Okay? Everybody has a right not to be perfect, and everybody has a right to make mistakes. And that is important that we understand that. And it is important that we learn to communicate that. And it is important that we learn to accept that from others as well. We beat ourselves up so often because we think we have to be perfect, and we don't. We do not have to be perfect any longer. Elisa will do a midweek chat today as well at 3 Eastern time in the group on the page. So go into that with Elisa. She'll be there for that. Thank you for reminding me, Elisa. So we're going to, you don't have to be perfect. And it is your right not to be perfect. Perfection is not something that we all have. Grace is what we need, but we don't always have perfection. And we're going to make mistakes. I know that with Carl and I've learned how to communicate. Well, I'm learning every day how to communicate more and more every single day with him. And as I do this, I go backwards sometimes. And I know that, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't yell. You shouldn't be snippy. You shouldn't do this. I know that. But what do and I know I shouldn't spew the venom, but I do it on occasion. Not as often as I used to, thank God. But you have to be able to understand and give yourself grace that you can make those mistakes. And you have to be able to say, I'm sorry. The other big thing, good morning, Libby. The other big thing that we get hung up on, that we get hung up on when we're using these tools and communication tools in our toolbox is we have to go forward. We have to have a place where we don't go back and live in the past. You can learn from the past, and you can learn your past mistakes from the past, because you can't change anybody else. Remember that. We can't change anybody else as we're going backwards. So when we get in these arguments, when we get in these disagreements, when we get in these places, and I'm not just talking about with our veteran, y'all, these are life skills. You can't throw up. Well, 6 weeks ago you did. If you're deciding to move forward today in your communication, in your relationship, and you're going to let the past be the past, you still have to learn from it, mind you, but you don't have to relive it. We don't have to relive. You can't undo what's been done. That was the hardest thing for me to understand. I can't undo what's been done. If he said something hurtful to me, I can't take that back. If I said something hurtful to him, I can't take that back. So you can wallow in that past and in those mistakes you made. Or you can choose today to go forward. So when you have these communications about, hey, I'm ready now. We're going to move forward in our relationship. We're going to move forward in our relationship. We're going to move forward in communication. You can't go back every time they slip backwards or throw it up and say, why do you have this attitude? Well, because 6 weeks ago you did it to me. How are you fixing anything? How are you moving forward? Yeah, we all screw up. I don't want everything in my past, every past mistake thrown up in my face. They don't either. So we all have a right to make mistakes, and we all have a right, it happens, we have a right not to dwell in them. Okay? When someone says that to you, what is that response? I have to sit down and I need to say, okay, look, we're drawing a line in the sand. We're either going to choose to go forward, and this is our starting point today, or we're going to go backwards. And I make it very clear. We need, again, it's inclusive, we need to find a starting point. Are you happy living in the past? Do we need to do skills to improve? And I always admit my faults. Yes, I spewed venom yesterday. Yes, I spewed venom 6 weeks ago. Yes, I was snippy yesterday. Take it into yourself first. When you start owning up to your shortfalls, they will start owning up to theirs. It's amazing how that works. And I'm talking about with anybody. I'm not just talking about with your veteran. So when you say, you know, we've done this. We've done this. We got to move forward. And Michelle's right. You got to sit with your feelings, process them, and let them go. You have to let it go. Y'all play that song in your head. You know, when we talk to our veterans sometimes and they get on this on and on and on kick, we do the lamb chop thing. Y'all need to keep that. I just would like to do a playlist for what we need. We need the lamb chop song, the song that never ends, and we need to hear very well, let it go. You have to let it go. Are you still, good morning, Nakia, are you still wanting to love your veteran? Are you wanting to go forward? Of course you are. You wouldn't be here. So you have to let the past mistakes go, yours and his. And this is true in any relationship. If somebody's done you wrong, you can't keep talking about them doing you wrong. It brings you down. If you want a new beginning, you go forward. You go forward. I have baggage from my past relationship, and it took me a long time with both of them. My first marriage was short-lived. It was 4 years. He was an addict. It was not a good relationship. And for a long time, I was bitter, angry, and hateful. And I tried to relive that bitter, angry, and hateful. And then one day, I just sat back and I said, you know what? So it was bitter, angry, and hateful, but I got 2 children out of it. That's my blessing going forward. And so all these negative things, right, that we have in our lives, the hateful words, the things that they've said, the things that we've said, no, they're a learning block for us. Take them as a learning tool for us. Take them as a learning tool for us. You know, when I became a paramedic, all right, I didn't just take an ET tube and intubate like a real human being, that it was life and death. You're right. You can't have a healthy relationship if you hold on to all the bad and constantly dwell on it or bring it up. Yeah. Y'all, they didn't let me intubate real human beings on day 1. We had to practice, and we failed at it miserably. We failed at visualizing vocal cords. We failed miserably at it. But then when I had to intubate the real patient for the first time, I couldn't go back and think about all the times I had messed up. I had to think about the successes that I had. And that is why I could intubate in the field. And the same thing happens here. You can't dwell on all the mistakes you made. Now, you always think about, well, why didn't that intubation work? Well, because I couldn't visualize the vocal cords. Okay, well, now you know you got to see them. The same thing happens in our relationship. Why didn't this work? Because this happened. Okay, well, you know what? We're not going to go that avenue again. We're not going to go that route again. We're going to learn from that. But what were my successes? That's why I tell you the victory wall is so important and so empowering. So when you're communicating that we are all allowed to make mistakes, one of the biggest pet peeves I have with Carl, the biggest, and he will tell you this is not a secret, is he always says, I'm sorry. Like if we're trying to pass each other, and like I'm coming out of the dining room into the living room, and he's coming from the living room into the dining room, and we go to pass each other, and he's in my path, he will step to the side and say, I'm sorry. You're sorry for what? For wanting a glass of water, or wanting a snack, or having to pee, or whatever it is? You don't need to apologize for that. That's not an I'm sorry behavior. But because of his past baggage, I'm sorry is the words he says. Okay, so you have to understand and get through these navigations. We are allowed to make mistakes. You know, my simple answer in paramedic was, we had these new paramedics, and they were like questioning every move they made, and like, I could have done this better, and I could have done this better, and I could have done this better. And I looked at them very bluntly. I said, did they die? No. Well, then you did fine. Could you do better? Yes. And we learn every day how to do better. But the question was, did they die? No. Well, then all right then. So I look at it this way, you know, we all go backwards. We all have mistakes. We all have issues. And we all have a right to make them, because we are not perfect. Get out of the perfection mindset and live in the grace mindset. Our veterans are not perfect. Our children are not perfect. And it's weird because, you know, like when they were little babies, I thought they were like perfect little angels, my kids, right? Now that they're adults, I'm like, damn, how did you ever survive? Because I see their mistakes. They're great young men. They are great men. They are wonderful, caring, loving, self-sufficient men. But when they were little, I thought they were like angels. Especially when they sleep. I don't know what it is about this, y'all, but when people are asleep, like my veteran and my children were asleep when they were little, they looked angelic. I think that's the only reason I didn't put pillows over their heads, because they looked angelic. So we have these rights. We have these rights to make mistakes and not to be perfect. And we have to learn to communicate that. When we fail at something, you need to be honest and say, hey, you know what? I screwed up today. Don't try to be perfect in it. Because this is what happens. This is what happens. When you walk around with this mindset that you are perfect, because we tend to point out other people's flaws. It's a human nature thing, right? It's a human nature thing. Yeah. Even going back to my kids, when I knew they both did something wrong, and I would yell at one of them for something they did wrong, and that one would say, "Well, Seth did this or David did that," just to take the blame from somebody else because they didn't want to absorb all the blame. But when we walk around like we're perfect, when we walk around like we make no mistakes, and then we always pick out the mistakes that our veteran is making and that our children are making or that somebody else is making, right? When we always do that, what do? We demean them and we make ourselves look invincible, and then you create a bigger divide. So for God's sakes, when you screw up, just say, hey, you know what? I am human and I made a mistake. We have that right. We have a right as human beings to make mistakes. It's not something we want to do every day, but for God's sakes, admit it. And when you do, then this superhero image of you goes away and you become more real. They already feel beat up. So when we point out every flaw and we don't take our own, how do you think they're going to feel? It's the same way when it flips around. How many times have we heard spouses say the crap they spew out of their mouth to us, we just can't deal with? We're tired of being called these names and we're tired of being done that. But has it ever dawned on you that it's a tit for tat deal? Has it ever dawned on you that maybe in the fight they are spewing all this venom, but maybe all the other times when we're talking about things with them, we tell them things like, well, you didn't take the trash out and you didn't help clean up this and you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do this. So they absorbed all the stuff we spewed back out to them. So they spew it out because we're playing this back and forth. You got to draw the line in the sand and say enough is enough. And because we understand that we're making this change, right? We see that we're making this change. It's going to take them a minute. It's going to take them a minute. But all of a sudden, they're going to see, oh my God, they're not talking to me that way. And we do have to learn to soften our hearts. We get frustrated. We get angry. But if we live in anger and frustration, where are we going? We're reliving the past. Every day is a new day. Every sunrise is a new sunrise. Get on board. Yeah, me too, Libby. If I got a lot of emotion behind what I'm saying, it comes off not so nice. Because y'all know me, I have zero filter and lots of passion. So when I try to put a point out there, I'm like the same way. I'm like, bah, bah, bah. So we just have to take our time and draw that line and revamp where we're at. You know, the other thing is, and this is super, 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 super hard for us. This is one of the hardest things for us to do. Every human being has a right to follow their own values and standards. Okay? This is super hard. And this all ties back into, all of these tie together in communication and whatever. How many times do we give in? Do we give in because it's something somebody else wants to do, and we give into it because it is the lesser path? And just talking about mistakes. There are certain things that are not going to happen. There are certain things that I do not want to happen. There are certain things that bother me. I need to stop selling myself out for that. I think one of the hardest things is, and Libby, I know that Libby and Michelle and them can attest to this. We all are do public things, and we're reaching out to the public and supporting our veterans. And I know that for us, that a lot of times we have this mental debate about sharing our Christian beliefs because you don't want to turn people off. And it becomes such an issue sometimes. And we have to be inclusive as a community. But your beliefs are your beliefs. Okay, you don't have to to do scripture or um, yeah, it's hard. You don't have to share scripture or push your belief, whatever it may be, whether it's Buddhist and chanting or whatever. You don't have to share that religious belief with people, but you live by your moral compass. And we have to learn to live by our moral compass. That goes back to everything we talk about. When we're having issues with our veteran or anybody, we don't want to be yelled at. So stop yelling at them. Okay? When we look at society falling apart around us, which by the way is a massive trigger for our veterans lately, massive trigger, there is no gasoline here. Zero gasoline. I have friends that work for ambulance services, and their private services, they don't have gasoline to get back from Jacksonville. Ain't that special? But we have to learn to live our moral compass. We have to learn to live and not sell ourselves out, because my moral compass and my moral beliefs may be different than all of Carl's beliefs, but we come together. But we have a common belief. And that's, you have a right to that. And you have a right to protect that. And you have a right to defend that. And you have a right to make your decisions based on that. I'm sorry, babe.
It's okay, no sorry.
Here we go. See, the sorry thing we just talked about. You have a right to protect that. And you have a right to deal with that and live with that. And that is so important. We tend to, when it comes to moral issues,
I'm gonna go get roast chicken one.
when it comes to moral issues, we tend to shut up about them because we're afraid to take our moral issues and put them out there. But let me tell you something, you are already doing that because your morals define who you are. You live your life based on your morals. So we have a right, when people put us in an awkward situation, not to sell ourselves out. We have that right. We have that right to stand up and say, have you lost your mind? We have that right when it comes to our spouse. We have that right when it comes to our kid. We have that right when it comes to our boss. We have that right when it comes to our friends. I have a lot of friends who don't agree with me politically. I'm not sure why we're still friends, but okay. I have a lot of friends who may not depend. So my thing is this. I'm not selling out my belief because I'm in a group with you, because I'm in a discussion with you that says that it's okay. We're not selling out our moral compass. It's part of communication. It's part of defining who you are. It's part of your relationship. When you know who you are and you can stand firm in who you are, understand this, and you can stand firm in who you are, every relationship you have will become stronger. I want to be the same Stacy, whether I have makeup on or just rolled out of bed, okay? I want to be that same Stacy day in and day out and day in and day out based on my moral compass. I want people to know that what you see is what you get. How do you expect them, anybody, to know how to live with you, to know what to say with you, to develop a relationship with you if you are wishy-washy and blow in the wind every time when it comes to morality? And that is a big issue with our veterans. Do y'all realize, I am going to share this later today, I asked veterans to write their story. I asked veterans to write their story. And one of the stories came from a veteran who talked about morals and how he felt about leaving a little girl behind. Okay, their moral compass defines them too, and also is a huge trigger for their PTSD. Because that is the one place in combat that they had to sell out their moral compass to survive and do the job. And when we bring our moral compass back to our lives, we have that right to live by those standards. And we have a right to talk to them about that. And when they have that guidance about where we are, I'm telling you, your life will be better. I'm telling you, your life will be better. Carl and I have a very clear definition of what our moral compass is. Our relationship with God is us. It's between him and I, between God and I. Carl's is between God and him. Do we share those moments of intimacy together? Yes. But we don't sell that out anymore. We don't sell that out. You know, here's a man who went to combat and people died. They died. He shot them. He will tell you that. But he's also the first person riding down the road that sees somebody with a flat tire that will turn around and go change their tire. That's his moral compass. And you don't sell that out. He has a right, like we do, to follow that moral compass and talk about it and be supportive of it. We miss that in our communication and in our tools. You're right, Nakia. Your moral compass is the cornerstone of your foundation. You gotta be the same. How in the hell? Y'all know, we have all said this. Every one of us have said this at some point, that living with a veteran with PTSD is like living with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You don't know from day to day or moment to moment which version you're going to get. And that's part of the PTSD issues. Okay, so if there's not a cornerstone with which to build on, you can't have anything. So your moral compass is important, and communicating about it is done. Okay? That's how it works. Here's the deal, Sarah. You can't walk on those eggshells. You can't walk on those eggshells. And that may be his vice that he keeps on. And then he realizes it, so he walks out, he disengages, has a smoke, comes back in, and re-engages and resets. And we do that. But we have to learn communication in our moral compass. If your veteran is drinking to oblivion and it's something you can't deal with, you can't tell them. Okay? You can't tell them stop drinking. That's on them. But what you can say is, you're not drinking in front of me. You're not drinking when this happens. And you can set those boundaries. I'm going to drink, go to the garage. I don't care. You can set those boundaries without getting rid of or sacrificing your moral compass. We have that right. They have a right to their own opinion. And I think where these relationships fail time and time and time and time again is we try to dictate to them, okay? Haley, that is a learning experience, and it will get better. Where he blows up and then turns around and says he didn't blow up, but you did, that will come. That will come when you learn better communication and practice it. I'm not it will come. This is a learning process for everybody. It is a learning process. We have to learn to communicate and set those boundaries and do those things. But the one thing we absolutely have to understand is we cannot fix them. Our actions and reactions can change the situation, and the situation then will change them. If you're going to sit here and say, my veteran, to live with him, he's got to do this, 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 and this, and you give him these things to do, he's got to participate. You can't change him. You can't change her. You change the way you react. You change the way you present. Remember, we talked about this a long time ago. Their trust factor is 0. It was inbred with them from basic training. They have 0 trust. So when you have a 0 trust factor, and you can sit here and say, I'm going to change, I'm going to change, I'm going to change, I'm going to change, and they don't see the change, that's where it comes from. Same thing with us. They'll say, I'm going to change, I'm going to change, I'm going to change, and we don't see the change, but it's the actions that speak louder. So when our actions, don't preach at them to change, start changing with yourself, and I promise you their change will come. You'll be amazed. You start changing yourself and being able to utilize that toolbox, and how we do that, you will find they change. And communication is key. But when we are in, and we're not in a place to communicate fairly, that we know we have rights, that we are not perfect, that's going to be the hardest thing. For me, the hardest thing was to admit I was making mistakes too. Hardest thing I ever did was to admit I was making the mistakes too. Hardest thing I ever did. We have to admit we're not perfect. We have to not sell out our moral compass. And we have to communicate both. And when you start admitting that you're not perfect, when you start admitting you're not perfect, things will change. And Sue's right. This didn't happen overnight for Carl and I. It took a long time. But when I started making the little changes, and listening to him, y'all, they give us all kinds of tips. Just like I said, though, it's a 1,000-piece puzzle, all the same color, and sometimes we don't get all the pieces, and they throw a few pieces here and there. But when you start listening to them, and you start listening to the little pieces they throw out, you're going to find exactly what bothers them. You're going to find how to communicate with them. You're going to find so much more. But agree that you're not perfect. Draw your line in the sand and stop throwing the past back up, because you can't live there. You can waller there, but you can't live there. It's over. It's done with. Today is a new day. Next moment will, another hour will be a new hour. There's all kinds of restarts. It is a hard pill to swallow, Libby, and I've done choked on it many a time. Don't sell out your moral compass. You have to be you consistently. There was a song. See, I keep telling my age. Don't go changing to try to please me. Don't go changing to try to please anybody. Be who you are. Keep your values. keep your moral compass. Y'all, they fell in love with us at some point. Remember that. We fell in love with them at some point. All this other stuff is just flipping clutter. Go back to why we're here. We love our veteran. That's the key. We love our veteran. So I'm going to get off here. Lots going on. Again, Lisa's going to have the chat room open. A lot of little changes going on. You'll see a whole lot more. I'm going to talk about the format for Let's Talk coming on Thursday nights. We're going to change that up just a little bit. Wednesday is Wellness Wednesday with Stephanie. Wednesday, we also do at 10 o'clock coffee, conversation, and collaboration. It is my getaway place. I cannot wait. It is my getaway place when we do coffee, conversation, and collaboration with our friends at Behind the Service Podcast. I need that space. I love it. Y'all are amazing, Libby. We have so much going on there. You know, it's amazing when you partner with. It is amazing when you partner with some great people. And we have some great people in this group, and we have some great people that we partner with outside of this group because the momentum is here. We love our veterans. That's our key. We love our veterans. That's our key. We will be launching later this week. We have a veteran-only support group. We have veterans to moderate that we will be putting out there that continues our same message, that we need to love each other, that we can grow. Its goal is to stop the feelings of suicide, to know that it's okay to feel, to know that it's okay to cry, to know that it's okay to be sad. So we are working, when I show my age, thanks. We will be working on getting that group up so we can share that as well. Lots going on. Again, we have so much coming. I'm so excited about the advisory council. I will post those people on the page. They are truly amazing people who give us some guidance and some insight. I'm going to get off of here because I've ran my mouth too long, and like Libby knows, I could talk forever. Most of these people know I could talk forever. Y'all have a blessed day. I'm Stacy. This is Walking in My Shoes, and we are loving my veteran. Have a blessed day. Bye.